we are. The account has been successfully created.
So you've created your Qualtrics account and now you're ready to create a survey. Let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is visit jcsu.qualtrics.com. And that will redirect us. We'll log in. And that'll take us to our dashboard. The dashboard is where we can see all of the surveys that we've created, all of the projects that have been shared with us, and it'll allow us to create a new project. So click on that blue button. We're creating a survey, so we will select survey. And it gives us a number of options here. We can name our project, but then we have the option of a blank project. We can create a survey from a copy of any of the surveys that you've already created, or a copy of any of the surveys that have been shared with you where you have that feature turned on by the person who created the survey. We can also create a new survey from a library. Qualtrics has a whole library that is available to you of surveys that are created that you can use as a starting point for your surveys. And then you can create a survey from a Qualtrics file that you have exported that you might now want to import back into Qualtrics and use that to create your survey. But we're going to start from a blank project and then click Get Started. So the Qualtrics environment has a number of features. As you can see, the title appears in the top left corner. You can actually change this right here if you need to. This is your environment that allows the survey to look, feel, flow, and work the way that you want it to. So let's go into look and feel. And this is where we can change the logo if we'd like to, as an example. So we'll go in there. If you don't have a logo already uploaded, then you're going to go to the big green button and upload a new graphic. But since I already have a logo, I'm going to select that. Another thing that I'd like to call your attention to is that in the General tab, you can include a progress bar so that people who take your survey are able to see how far they have progressed within your survey. And we will save that. The next thing is survey flow. Just as an overview, you have what's called a block, and you can tell the survey tool what you want to happen in a particular case. So as an example, if I have an informed consent section where somebody has to check yes or check no that they have given their informed consent. If they check no, then I don't want them to take the survey. I want for them to jump all the way down to the end of survey. This survey flow is where you're able to make that happen. So let's cancel out of there. You can also change survey options. You have a survey title, which is what appears in the browser. I like to change this. And then the meta description. So what the meta description does is when you have a search engine or social media, the description that comes up automatically is going to be what you type here in meta description. And then we have survey protection. Survey protection allows you to determine who gets access to taking the survey. So who will respond to this survey? You can make it so that anyone can access the survey, in which case you're likely going to have very specific demographic questions or questions that will allow you to filter out who takes the survey, and then we'll use survey flow to bump them down to the end of the survey if they don't qualify to take the survey. By invitation only is a way to have a lot of control over who takes the survey. And the way that we do that is we allow for Qualtrics to actually send out the email to those individuals in our very particular contact list. Other items of note are survey termination. So what happens at the end of a survey? We want, once they hit send my survey, do we want for there to be an end of survey message that we create that's custom? So you can go into custom, load a saved message, my library, and then create a new message. Or if you've already created messages, then those will appear right up here. In addition, you have the option of redirecting to a full URL, and I tend to like to redirect to the Smith Institute website. And then finally, we can send an additional thank you email from a library. So when we send the survey via the survey mailer, we can either create a new message or load one that we've already saved. And this is what that new message would look like. So we'd enter a description, which would be the title that we could use later, and then we can type in a new message. Anonymized response might be important if you don't want the recording of any personal information and separating the contact association from your respondents. The last thing that I'd like to call your attention to under survey options is partial completion. So when somebody only partially completes a survey, then what happens? So we can tell it to either record or delete that response, or the response is in progress. And we want it to wait, and we can identify how much time. So I would say 2 weeks, and that depends on your survey, but also whether or not you have a deadline for that survey. So if you have a deadline that is 48 hours or 72 hours, then you're probably just going to want to record that data or delete that data. And then it's 2 weeks or 48 hours or however long after the survey respondents' either last activity or the start of the survey. So you can control for that too. And then we hit save. So this is where the survey options live. The first thing that I like to do when I'm creating a survey is that I like to provide some context. So my first question usually is descriptive text. So to change the question type, I'm going to click on the big green button. In this case, I'm going to select descriptive text. And I have two options. It can be plain, or I can elect to have italics and bold and different rich text options. For the time being, I'll select plain text, and I'll type in, "Thank you for completing the test survey." So once you finish creating a question, you have a few options for how to move on to the next thing. So that next thing might be creating a new question within this same block. You can do that by either importing a question, creating a new question, or on here you'll see where there's a plus above, which allows you to create a question that falls above this question that you're in, or you can do the same below. The numbers, the question numbers, are automatically created. And just because you create a question that is above, it does not automatically change the question number. So I don't want my question 2 to be there. I have two options here. I can either delete it, or over here, I can move it down. Now I can make my second question informed consent. And by no means is this informed consent real informed consent. One thing that Qualtrics does is it anticipates what the answers might be in a multiple choice question. I only want for there to be 2 choices. And this has already selected automatic choices. Within automatic choices, there are a number of possibilities here. Depending on what you're looking to do. I would like to add a new block, so I will name this contact block. And then I can create a new question. What I would like to do is provide text entry and I want for this to be a form. A form allows you to get specific information. So you can ask someone to enter their name. When I hit tab or enter, it tries to anticipate again what might my next response be. I don't want address, so I'm gonna say email address. And actually, I like to say JCSU email address to just specify. And then phone number. This blue button allows you additional options here. So I'll click on city and I'm going to delete that because I don't need that field. I don't need that field. But if I wanted to move the phone number up, I can do that. And then I would write my question, which is please provide contact information, which isn't officially a question, but in the Qualtrics interface, it is considered a question. I'd like to edit this form field because what I want is for if somebody enters a number in the name field, I want for that to be validated. I want it to be rejected. So I want the text value, non-numeric, to be validated. And then for the phone number, I'd also like to make sure that it is a US phone number that gets entered. And the same thing with email address. I'd like to make sure that it's a valid email address. So every email address has to have an @ symbol. It has to have a dot. It has to have 2 or 3 letters toward the end. So I want to validate that. Because this is the contact block and that's all of the contact information that I would like, I'm going to add a new block. In that block, I'm going to call this basic research questions. And I'm going to create a new question. This will be a multiple choice question. And here are all of my options. I can include a drop-down list, which can be helpful if you would like to input the different colleges or schools or departments. My question might be, which of the following describes So one of the questions that we might ask is, do you like research? And again, it anticipates the possible options. I would like for there to be 2 responses. I'd also like to ask a question about which resources they've used. Because they may have used more than one, I'll allow multiple answer, and that will allow me to check more than one or none. Now we'll move on to more complicated research questions. We'll call this ratings. For this question, I would like a matrix table. So this question can be, how well would you rate each? So it took the fact that I asked how well, and my responses also fall in line with the question. But I have different matrix types, the Likert scale, bipolar, and other options here. In this one, you can enter numbers. I'll leave that as Likert scale. And then I'll add another block. And this is going to be CAPTCHA and signature. So the CAPTCHA verification just makes sure that a person is a person. last question that I'm going to put in there is the signature. So let's take a preview of this survey. Yes, I'm going to give informed consent, and we can circle back and talk a little bit about the options that we have with that. I'm just going through the survey to get a feel for how someone taking my survey might experience it. Okay, and then it redirects me to the Smith Institute website. So I changed my mind. I don't actually want the CAPTCHA. I'll take my chances and I will remove that question. So then what I'll do is I will change the name of this blog so that it's just signature. Once we do our survey and we have all the questions that we're looking to present our respondents with, we're going to look at this IQ score, and it'll give us some suggestions on how we can improve the survey. According to this, our survey might not be mobile friendly. So let's expand this question and see what the challenge might be. So how well would you rate each of the following? So this might be a challenge for our mobile survey respondents. So let's go to that question and see what that looks like. Here it is. So this is what it looks like on the desktop, and for mobile it does adjust, but this is a large number of options for mobile. I'm going to make a judgment call here, and I will say, because it's only 3 options, we'll let the question stand as is. So let's see what other suggestions there are. Accessibility. Question 10. Okay, so what we need to say is, please provide your signature below. That may not fully address it, but instead of the question not mentioning signature at all, it has something there. The rest of these are The rest of these are good. And it does say that these are minor. If there was anything that was severe or moderate, they would appear here. So our survey is looking pretty decent. The next thing that we'd want to do is look at distributions. So we have different options for distributing the survey. We can email it and compose an email within Qualtrics. We can edit this. Make sure that we put a subject. This from address needs to stay, but you can edit the from name and the reply to email, and I would change this to smithinstitute.jcsu.edu. So you can create a new contact list. You put in email address. It's preferred that you enter a first name and a last name, because what you can do, and I'll show you, you can enter what's called piped text. Now, instead of it just saying hi exclamation point, this little squiggly bracket with the A inside of it is for piped text. So in my contacts field, I can enter the recipient's first name. This code with the $sign and all the way through to that squiggly bracket, you don't want to change that, because that is code that tells Qualtrics, pull that first name and put that first name here. Same thing with the following the link to the survey, the $sign ending in this squiggly bracket. That lets you know that those are all codes that Qualtrics needs intact to be able to properly execute that command. So we have the option of sending it now, or in an hour, or 28 days, whatever our schedule requires. I'm going to have this send now. Right here it tells you that it's sending. So this email has been sent. So I sent this to the Smith Institute email address, and this is what it looks like. This is the first name that we entered. This was the code that linked to the survey. And here is the code for the copy and paste URL. This section also was code, but because on the back end of Qualtrics, it recognizes that code, the output shows here. Because we sent an email to one of our survey respondents via the distributions tab, the survey already published. If you have any changes that you'd like to make to the survey, it'll make that publish button green again. So we'll publish that. If you'd like to view the recommendations, you can. And there you have it. You have created a survey. Please like this video if it's been helpful and subscribe. Thanks for watching.